but we'll still have people kind of join in. But I wanted to at least get everything started just to kind of let you guys know what's going on. You've all got obviously the notice and stuff, and for those of you who are new, this is now the 21st one. I originally said I was only going to do 10, and so here we are on 21. We were doing it every Friday. This month we converted to every other Friday, so we will skip next Friday and go to the next one. That's so we can make room for a much deeper dive on a mastermind that we'll be launching in November. Meanwhile, I did want to welcome to the house Elizabeth Crosby with Rasa IO. It's really cool how I came across them. So I was reading a book, Artificial Intelligence in Marketing. I think it's by Paul Reitzer. I never can quite remember how to pronounce his last name. Great book, great organization, read about Rasa, and then I contacted them for a demo, and Elizabeth was kind enough to give me the demo, and then I found out they were in New Orleans, 2 hours from here. Who knew?
Wow.
Right? Yeah, so I was really impressed with that, to have a local company in the mix. So that was really cool. She gave me this incredible demo, this whole new idea of how AI could really help. I've seen some of these things before where you basically have a giant list of articles that you can pick and choose from, but they took it to a whole new level. And so I invited her to come and address the group and walk y'all through everything. And so she agreed to do that. So I'm going to give her the floor here in a second. And I know a lot of you have requested access to the replays. If you're new and you don't know how to request access, it should have been emailed to you when you registered, a little link. If not, it's right there. It's just bazooka.com/roundtable-replays. You can register in that. That'll put you into our community. It's a circle community, and you'll see all the replays. We usually post them up within 24 to 36 hours. It depends on how fast Kelly is in making that happen. But then you'll have access to all those replays, and we have 20 of them now back there. And we teach different things about AI and how to use it, and so we get pretty complicated. So hopefully it won't be too complicated for all of you. And then in it, we always talk about how do you really leverage your prompts, and we create a framework that we call scalable prompting. It just makes it so that anybody in your organization can use them. And we have given away access to the prompt database and about 30 of them. So if you want access to that, you can go to bazooka.com/prompts. Some of you have already gotten access to the free prompt database. So anyway, that said, I am going to, that's enough housekeeping for one day. So I'm going to go ahead and let Kathy or Elizabeth Crosby claim the host. So Elizabeth is what I was telling you about. She's just amazing, and she lives in New Orleans. What's not to love, right? But her company is amazing. It's really, really cool technology. So without further ado, Elizabeth, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and the company and take it away.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Sean, so much. Also, exciting to have another fellow Louisianian talk about AI. Right. A little introduction and background on me. Like John said, I am a born and raised New Orleans resident. Rasa is based out of New Orleans too. Our founder, Amit Nagarajan, got his start. He's a serial entrepreneur, but really got his start in the professional and trade association world. So he built a software, an AMS, which is really essentially a CRM for membership for associations. And since then has had a couple of other ventures, but Rasa is one of them that really harnesses AI. And then a little bit of background on Rasa is that we, like I said, our roots are in the association world, and we actually began in its infancy back in 2015 we were an online community platform. So a lot different from what we do today. But the reason we shifted more into email marketing is because we created this online community platform where members could go in and post interesting articles and industry news, or maybe blog posts that they had written for the other membership to see and interact with. And at the time, one of the core features of Rasa was, of course, the community, but then we would also send these daily digest or weekly digest emails to the members saying, here's what you missed in the community. And we would use AI to take all of that data and personalize it based off their previous interactions with posts and say, here's your, top 10 stories that we think for you would be most interested, kind of like a here's what you missed. And what we ended up hearing from our customers was, the platform's fine, the community is a community, but I really don't feel the need to log into it because you guys send me everything that I want to read and hear about. So we pivoted and said, this is where the real draw is. So that's how we kind of shifted into just an email platform and shifted into the newsletter realm, because that's really what it was, keeping in touch, staying top of mind, and sending news and updates that were the most relevant to the audience. So what we'll do today is we'll kind of just touch on some general email marketing challenges. These won't be, things that no one's ever heard of. Then we'll talk about just in general, how AI plus the human touch is really the dream team. And then we'll get into how the Rasa newsletter platform works. And then, of course, take any questions. Maybe even if we have time, we can actually get into the dashboard and take a look at what some people are doing in it. So some common email marketing challenges: low engagement, content production, staff time being spent on that, content relevance and personalization, consistency in communications, and disconnect between your other marketing channels. So no surprise here that these are usually all interconnected. So maybe you have low engagement because you're not consistent in your communications. And maybe that's because you don't have the staff time to put together an email by hand and make sure it's super relevant and going to the right people and going out every single day or every single week or every single month. And then disconnect between other marketing channels. So maybe you have a bunch of data sitting in one marketing channel, but you're not really sure how to infuse it into an email strategy. So again, figuring out how we can connect all of these things and find tools that help improve each of these different challenges that you're facing as a marketer. And then where AI can help with all of this. So again, I say help because it's typically not ever a full replacement, especially in the last year or so. If you've been educating yourself on the world of AI, it's a pretty general consensus that the robots are really not here to replace. They're here to help and help you do your job better. So of course, you don't want to sit down and handpick articles for 1,000 or 10,000 people in your audience. Get the robots to do that, pick and choose content, make sure it's personalized, and take all these data points and hone in on the most important ones and use that to take action. And then, of course, automation, removing all the tedious stuff that you hate about putting together a newsletter or an email, copying and pasting the links, creating a template, going and searching for news that you think is good. Again, even writing copy for it. So writing an intro to your email. Again, it doesn't have to be a full replacement. Prompt it, use some copy, and then put it in your own voice. And then lastly, predictive analytics. So doing all of these things and then taking all of that great data and the insights that you're going to get from it and saying, what do I do next with it? So how Rasa works, how the email newsletters work. And again, the newsletter isn't the end all be all answer, but it's a really powerful tool that people are already familiar with and typically have a relationship with. So how do you take these tools and really improve it? We like to say that we're email newsletters 2.0 because it's just a different way of doing it. It's not your typical email where you're putting it together by hand, going in, like I said, writing the content for it, hitting send when it's ready. It's very automated. And the other piece of that is that AI personalization. So recording what people are interacting with, looking at the individual data, what they're engaging with, and then using that to actually tailor the content that you're sending them. So we know when you're sending out through a traditional email platform, typically it is a one size fits all email. Maybe you have some hard segments where things are different, but it may or may not be that the content in it is relevant to all of your audience. So we know your audience is typically brought together under some sort of industry umbrella. They're all here for a reason. And of course you're going to use that to curate the content, but everyone is an individual. They have their individual specialty areas, individual interests, things that they're going to engage with more than others. So take that and use it to give them an email that they really want to read. And so that's exactly what Rasa helps you do. Create an individual email with news tailored to that subscriber. So instead of sending out your email newsletter to 10,000 people and having it be the same, take 10,000 emails and have them be unique and send them out in a really automated way that actually saves you time. So to talk a little bit more about the automation piece of it, how do we automate this setup process of a newsletter? So the first piece of it is identifying where the content's coming from. So is it coming from your blog? Is it coming from a partner site that produces really good news? Is it coming from just a general industry publisher that you know is going to be publishing news that's interesting to the audience? So identifying those sources and getting them to automatically feed into the Rasa dashboard. Typically, we're doing that through their RSS feed. So they're already giving us an aggregator to do that. We plug that into our dashboard, and as they publish the news, we get to bring it into Rasa. But there's lots of other different ways. You can use social channels. So again, whether it's your own LinkedIn page that you're already going and posting to, feeding that in, or maybe a thought leader, maybe another organization in the space who always posts really great articles and shares them, using them as a source for content. And then again, other applications that are doing the aggregation for you already. So like a Flipboard or even Google News. We have a lot of people come to us and they say, yeah, I'm always including external industry news. Typically, I'm just going to search through Google and find what they pull up and put it in. So eliminating the middleman between those and integrating with Google News. Give us your search terms and then we'll feed it in through Google to Rasa. And so you don't even necessarily these days have to be producing your own content. We have people on all ends of the spectrum, some who only use Rasa to automate and personalize the dissemination of the content that they're producing. If they have a high volume of content, a whole team writing that content, then they just use us to feed it in and then push it out in a personalized way, ordering it according to what that subscriber is going to be most interested in. But I would say and then we have, the opposite side that we don't produce any content. We're a one-man team. I don't have time, but we know there's relevant content out there everywhere. So again, identifying those sources, and then you can refine it even more by adding filters and keywords on our platform to say, great, pull in inc.com, but only pull in articles that are about these topics. So again, finding that level of what you're wanting to send to the audience and then sourcing that through Rasa. And so a lot of people also come to us and say, well, how does that benefit me sending a Forbes article out to my audience? And what we found through looking at the data over the years is that it's not even necessarily who's producing the content, but you're sending them this valuable and relevant resource because it's branded to you. This email's got your branding, your header, it's coming from you, you're providing the industry news to them, and that's a value in itself. And typically in tandem with that, then people know you're the trusted resource. You actually drive more traffic to your site too, because people are engaging with your communications more. And then again, just a look at the dashboard. So you are telling us where to look for the content. So you're the expert in the space. You're telling us where to source that. And we're not just going to go scour the entire internet looking for things that we think might be relevant. So you identify where the content comes from, if you want to filter that down at all. And then what you end up with is really, instead of this production process of your newsletter where you're going out searching for these things, looking for them, is more of a review process. So great, based off my settings, what have we pulled in this week for the newsletter? And you end up with this list of content that's been aggregated over the last week or 2 weeks or month, however often your newsletter goes out. And you can come here, review it all. You have a toggle. So if anything comes in that you're like, that's not so relevant, I don't want to send that out to my audience, toggle it off. And then from there, the curation happens automatically. So our system's going to go in and say, okay, time for the newsletter to go out. Dan's going to get these 5 articles. Lisa's going to get these 5 articles, because we know based on her previous engagement, what she's interacting with and what those topics mean to her, what kind of articles are going to be most interesting to her. And then, typically you're going to want to infuse your own content in here too. So lots of different ways to do that. And make sure your content's automatically getting featured. So whether that's, feeding your blog in and making sure that's always the featured story when there's something there, or pre-scheduling just recurring events. So maybe you have a webinar that you're doing in a couple months and you want to make sure that's recurring in every newsletter. Sit down one day and pre-schedule out your content for the next month or 6 months. So there's 3 different types of content blocks that you can have in your newsletter. First is, of course, an article. And the second is static images that are infused within the personalized news. So whether that's a banner that you're selling ad space for someone who wants to get in front of your audience, maybe you're monetizing the newsletter. Maybe it's just an internal promotion for, again, an event you're having, a webinar you're hosting that you want people to sign up for, just a static graphic. And then last is some text. So like I said, an intro to your newsletter, a conclusion, maybe just an announcement to remind your audience about something. That's the third type of content you can have in your newsletter. We do have a chat GPT integration throughout the platform in several places. One of those is in our text module. So again, if you want chat GPT to help you create the copy for that newsletter intro, you can say, you know what, let's make this one funny. Let's make sure we mention my new blog post and remind them about this. So that can actually create some copy for you, save you time on that piece of the production process. So really the high level overview of it is find where is producing content that you're going to feature in your newsletter that would be interesting. We'll get it into Rasa automatically. And then, like I said, adding the human touch on it, your review process, going to do a scan of the articles, making sure everything looks good, writing an intro, something from your voice that's going into it. But then from there, the AI is curating all of it. It's choosing the articles at scale. It's placing them into the template that you design. And then it's sending the emails out through our system. So then that brings me a little more to the design and the look and feel of it. So this is a good example of looking at it in the inbox, how it looks, how it's branded. This is a daily newsletter that we do for the American Marketing Association. So obviously there's all sorts of facets of marketing news, but you can see these are 2 individuals' unique newsletters. When the AMA has a new blog post that they've published, they of course want to get that in front of everyone. It automatically feeds into that headline spot. It gets the first article slot, and then the rest of the external marketing news fills in below and can be different for every individual. Again, more about the look and feel. You know, we have out of the box templates where you come onto our dashboard, pick the base design that you like, and then infuse your branding, your colors, your fonts, header imagery, really put your voice and branding into it. And then as far as custom templates too, if you have a really specific vision for how your communications look and you want it to look a certain way, also no problem. We do custom HTML templates. So you work with a designer on our team, you know, give us a mock-up of how you want the newsletter to look, and we code it up to speak to the Rasa dashboard. Can also manage multiple newsletters within the platform. So again, maybe it's different audiences that you're sending to. Maybe you have a client newsletter and maybe you have an internal newsletter, or maybe a prospect newsletter and a current customer newsletter. So you can manage all of those newsletters within one platform. They each get their own template content and, you know, of course, audience. And then the overall benefits. So, of course, the brand elevation, like I mentioned before, you don't necessarily have to be the ones producing super relevant, great content. If you are, incredible, we're going to feature that. You're going to drive traffic. But just getting that relevant news to your audience is, of course, going to elevate your brand. Because like I said, you're going to become the trusted resource for it. You're going to stay top of mind because they're actively engaging with that email on a consistent basis. This is a client we have that their main goal was, how do we interact on an individual level without spending hours and hours of staff time? And so you can see their engagement went up, their total click rates went up, and then the best part is they got to save time actually putting it together. Which brings us to the automation and the scale. So the time savings, again, eliminating all of that tedious work, going out and sourcing the content, actually putting it into the template and designing it. We have another customer who said they feel like they added another staff person because all of this is taken care of and they get to go put the finishing touches on it and work on other strategies. More things that AI saves you time on. So of course, it's curating the articles at scale for every individual, taking the data we have, using it to actually order the articles according to the data that we have. We're going to look at the reporting in just a minute, but other things, subject lines can be AI generated, events, webinars, job boards, things like that. These are all examples of not so much breaking news or industry news content that you can have in your newsletter, but different sections that can also use the AI recommendation. So yeah, here's 5 events that we're having this year. Order them for everyone in the order that you think they'd be most interested in them. And then again, the ChatGPT infusions for actually generating content or rewriting content that you've pulled in. We use AI to crop our images and our templates, so they're all honed in on the point of interest and uniform in those templates that we give you. And then the data and insights. So really important to actually look at the engagement in your newsletter and take actionable insights on them. So you can see this is another screenshot of that upcoming articles page where we're aggregating all of the news for the upcoming newsletter for you. And what happens here is every time that we pull an article into our system, whether that's automatically, whether you're going in and popping a URL in, the AI is going to read the full text of the article, digest it, and say, here's the article, here are the topics that it's about. It's about strategic planning, artificial intelligence, social media, brand management, whatever it is. And so those are now associated with that article. When a user clicks on that article, we're going to say, okay, that's going to go in their word cloud. We know that John is interested in marketing and AI. And so we use those topics to infuse his selections for his next newsletter. But you're also going to see this in your analytics at the audience level. So what's trending right now? You can look at this for the last year, for the last newsletter, whatever date range, and it's going to show you what's getting the highest engagement. And then this is all, of course, in addition to your standard email open and click data, but honing in on those topics and what subscribers are clicking on can be super powerful as far as taking action on these. So taking it a step further and not only sending this information out through the newsletter and using that data to recycle and personalize further, but doing other things with it, creating more highly targeted communication. So what you're looking at here is an example of our rich integration with HubSpot, which we love. Great platform, but it's also reflective of our open API that you can build a bridge to with your own CRM. So what this does is it pushes all of that granular subscriber data back into your CRM. So you can look at an individual and say, great, so this is how many times John has been clicking. He clicks on this topic a lot. He clicked on this individual article. And you can even run more powerful reports and say, great, let's take anyone who clicked on this topic or anyone who clicked on this specific article. Let's send them a follow-up campaign to make sure that they registered for this or they're doing this. So just examples of how you can take all of this data that you may not think is super important because it's just a newsletter and actually take action on it and send even more personalized communications. And last is those elevated promotions. So like I said, if you're looking to monetize your newsletter and sell that ad space in it, or you can use it for, again, just internal promotion, having that imagery within the personalized news. So it doesn't look like a super salesy email, but, being able to get in front of your audience and promote certain things. All the templates come with support for banners, side-by-side squares. If you're doing any sort of sponsored content, support for that as well. We've had a lot of people come to us, especially those in that trade association space, and say, our advertisers are loving this. The engagement's great. We have this whole nother stream of revenue now coming from the newsletter.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Real quick, because we've got a few questions stacking up, and I know Alexandra just said she's got a bolt. Her question was, and several of them have asked, can it integrate with other platforms? In fact, she's talking about specifically email platforms like Constant Contact, or does it serve as its own entity? My feeling is it pretty much serves as its own entity, right?
Yeah, so it serves as its own entity, but we do, like I just showed, the HubSpot integration and using our API, it can be pretty much connected to most platforms in different ways. So again, whether that's through a direct native integration we have a ton of those where we write back to different platforms. It's available to do a custom build. The other option would be like a Zapier. So connecting those so that you're zapping things back and having them be the middleman between different platforms.
Okay, cool. Because I know Will also asked about the API, and several have asked about your ability to change like the thumbnail and the headline for an article that you've pulled in from an RSS feed or something else to customize it. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, so editing all within the platform. In that upcoming articles page, you have full edit capability. We pull the data in from the web page, so whatever they're publishing in the metadata as the title, description, and image, we pull that in automatically. But then you can open it up and all of those fields are editable. So maybe you want to shorten the description or add some commentary in here. All of those things, change the image, are things that you can do within the platform.
Awesome. Okay, I'll let you keep going, and then we'll have a whole lot of other questions.
Yeah,
several
absolutely.
are still in the queue, but
yeah,
okay,
the last couple of things that we'll talk about are just some bonus tools that we give you depending on the strategy. So this is a landing page that we give you. You can embed it on your site. What it does is dynamically update with all of the popular articles from your past newsletters. So you can have a banner at the bottom if you're looking to use it for lead gen or subscriber growth and say, here's what our readers are reading, sign up today, and use that form as a tool to grow your list. the other thing, I think we're all pretty familiar with these share to social icons. Again, we had a lot of customers come to us and say, great, I'm consistent with my email strategy. It's relevant. I know I need to post more on my social channels. It would be great if we could push out the really engaged with content from the newsletter to our following on social and boost the engagement there. And then last but not least, we have a year-over-year enterprise client retention rate of 97%. And I think what that speaks to really is the ease of use, because it's a relatively low lift to get set up and running. It doesn't have to be a super technical build. It's going to be identifying sources, designing a template, and then from there, it's a pretty seamless process. And then you get such a high value return of the high engagement, sending that relevant news to everyone. So it just becomes a core part of the content strategy. And then again, we have plenty of case studies that we can provide to what different organizations have done to revamp the newsletter. But let's go ahead and take time for questions.
Yeah, cool. And for those of you who are new or not, we kind of open mic this. I mean, you're welcome to raise your hand if you have a question, but feel free to just unmute yourself and ask away. And then we'll get Elizabeth to maybe walk us through the back end. So I know, Will, you had a few questions. I tagged on a few of them, but if you want to clarify, what else have you got?
Yeah, I'm wondering the analytics piece. If we want to tie all the analytics together, can we automatically kind of integrate with a report that we're generating out of our CRM or out of Salesforce or out of Google Analytics, or is that like a manual process to pull that data together?
To pull it all together. So if they are kind of ad hoc all in different places that aren't speaking to each other, sure, it would be, you can always pull the reports manually from the dashboard. But if we can get talking to like the one main source of truth, which is going to be, through our API, or if we have a rich integration, pushing that back into one central place where you're gathering all of this data, and then taking that and taking action on those insights.
Great, thank you.
Cool.
Yeah.
Adriana, I know you had a question about CRMs and specifically like Microsoft Dynamics. Tell me more about what you're looking for there.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. We are using HubSpot today. We do not use the email platform, though. So we're a little disconnected. And sure enough, we're migrating away from HubSpot into Dynamics. So do you integrate there?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are constantly, our roadmap is full of different CRMs that we would build a native integration to. Again, all of this can be custom built with an API, but being able to take that custom work out of it and having an integration that's very seamless where you log in, allow the data to flow and check a few boxes is the main goal. So Dynamics is one that's currently on the roadmap. But that's another thing we do. We listen to our customers, what people are using right now, what's most popular, and what makes the most sense for us to connect to, and have you get the ability to feed all that data into one place.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Paul. I have a question on email address validation. And the reason I'm asking is we just did a complex email campaign for a higher ed, and we went through they gave us a list of like 100,000 email addresses, internal lists. This is all customer supplied. And it's a mess, right? So we go out to our other provider, do email address validation, get the report back. It reported back that 11,000 email addresses may be iffy because they couldn't validate because it was .pvamu and they couldn't get inside that server. And so we went with it, and I got the bounce report back. We got 63-ish thousand out with about 25% hard bounces. This was after
the cleaning.
Address validation with my trusted partner that does that. And we go back into the analytics, and mostly all of it was through their address dot pvmu. So do you guys have a workaround around that, or something that you've experienced when the customer server itself is rejecting it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's a couple things, and then, you know, deliverability is always such a hot topic with email. So there's things we do on the front end, exactly like you mentioned, doing that email validation when the list is coming into our system and trying to weed out anyone that we already know is going to be bad. So that's always something done on the front end. And then it's not uncommon always, of course, when that first email goes out, then we get hard bounces. But what we do to hopefully combat that on the front end is we definitely encourage you to send emails out introducing the newsletter, saying, hey, this is, you know, you're going to get this new smart newsletter, this great benefit. Here's what you can do to make sure it lands in your inbox, and give them some tools. Say, whitelist this domain. Here's, even for some customers, depending on the space, customers we have in finance, it's highly regulated. They have these protocols that they send out these emails. They even give the sending IP address that we come from and say, make sure this is whitelisted on your server so that we get through and don't get rejected. And then on the other half of that, once something does hard bounce in our system, we automatically unsubscribe them. That's gonna, you know, we don't want to keep sending to those people. That's going to hurt your reputation. It's going to hurt our reputation. So just taking measures like that to make sure that everything is as clean as possible.
You don't have an easy button. Okay, got it.
I wish I did.
I'm teasing.
If
It was just,
email...
it seemed absurd to me. I'm not, look, I'm not, this is not my world. Very interesting. I mean, we do email campaigns and stuff like that. I mean, love it, love it, love it, but it's not my personal expertise. We got a couple guys on staff, which are great. But I thought when you go through that, and it's a customer's domain name, you know, that's golden. And apparently it's exact opposite. That I think it has to do, correct me if I'm wrong, with the quantity of emails that are going out at one time. So in other words, you said, why don't you go and tell your people that it's coming? Well, that's the absurd part, right? So you do that kind of one at a time, or over time would be a better way to get an email out preliminarily.
Right. Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Like you said, there's no easy button. There are so many different factors that go into email deliverability, as we've learned over the years. And, you know, there's not one simple solution to it, but there are certainly things you can do. Like if you have a list of 100,000, throttling the delivery time so that over the next 2 hours, these go out in spurts. So it doesn't like immediately raise any flags. So yeah, those are definitely all things that are possible and things that we think about, and, you know, usually try and get to on the front end.
But your routine is when we send you a list, assume, you know, you do our best shot on making it clean and give it to you each time you do your steps.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we have those recommendations.
Now, one of the other issues, Paul, and Will, I'll get to you in just a second, but Paul, one of the other things that we have run into is if you have, let's say, 50 to 100 people in one organization and you're hitting that mail server, that you really need to space out, because if you just shove 100 emails into a single server at one company, it'll flag, and then you have
thanks, John. I appreciate that. This is kind of opposite, that they're students from the education from PVMU. So they're students. So those are all going out to disperse. So I'm not going to 100,000 people
going in,
at
you're going
PVMU.
out.
Yeah, that's why I didn't understand when it's their address. They also had like .alumni, pvmu.alumni or something, and pvmu.edu, and then just pvmu. Those were the ones, like the most solid looking address was the ones that had the most addresses and got rejected. You go figure. Anyway, I'm sorry to beat that up. It's so fresh. And when you're sending emails, I mean, I never think of deliverability and data. And I tell all my clients that's the most important thing. And here I am. I just assumed that when you get the list and, you know, it looks good, then you do your validation, it's good. So
Right.
sorry.
Right.
Hey,
And
I
then
did
I
want
think
to say hi to Paul Chrisman, who is the Chief Innovation Officer over there at RASA. Hey, Paul, good to see you here.
yeah,
And
Paul,
then Will,
pretty-
what was
Paul
your
is
question? Pardon me?
Yeah, mine was similar in that we're in the fortunate position of having a highly engaged audience with like 78% open rate and 40% click-through rate. I mean, it's just off the charts. And so I'm a little reluctant to step outside of our current newsletter format. So the question is whether or not we could use something like Raza to assemble and then send out through our own platform in some way. So that I don't know what that capability is or not.
Yeah, that's a great question, Will, and something that we definitely hear too. Right now, it is through RASA and through our system, and then I think I saw someone, I think Adriana had a question about domain authentication. So that's again one of those checkboxes that we highly encourage you to do is authenticate your domain so it doesn't, look like we're spoofing your email, and we have permission to send from that domain, so it's still familiar to all of your users so that you don't lose out on that. And then since John called him out, Paul on our team, he's our CIO. He's in the weeds of all the technical stuff, so feel free to even get more techie in here with all of the deliverability talk. He's become quite an expert over the last few years with all of that.
I don't blame you for not jumping in.
I could jump in, but I figure I'll respond to specific questions. So far, Elizabeth's covering all of our capabilities very well.
It's easier to fight one fight than a battle of a bunch, so I understand completely.
Hi, Elizabeth. This is Mike. I have a question. Do you have problems with AI that it's giving articles that are made up or something, like, like the hallucination stuff?
That the articles that we are sourcing are AI generated.
Mm-hmm.
So because we let the user identify where that content is coming from, and we only look to those places to bring it in, it's really up to the user where they want to source the content from. So in that sense, we don't really hear much about that. And then because like you saw, everyone has full review capability on their dashboard. They can see and have visibility into everything that could potentially be chosen for a newsletter. So they also have that, responsibility of monitoring what they are sending out to based off what we're pulling.
Read the proof carefully. It's your responsibility. This is from the client, so it's client responsibility. So check, edit, use your brain.
But the question is,
before it goes,
if you're gonna personalize this for 10,000 people, let's say, there's no way for me to read it all, or it's not really gonna be that personalized. It's gonna be more grouped. Like Elizabeth, that's the question.
Yeah. So you essentially are the overall curator of the content. So that is also something that you can scale to. If you say we're going to look to 200 different sites and bring in all of the articles they're publishing, yeah, you're probably going to have a big review process that you're going to have hundreds of articles each week that have been published to go through. Typically, our clients are dialed in and they have, anywhere from 50 to 100. Again, some are more, some are much less sources that they're pulling from. And then those can be really refined too, to pull in certain articles that match their industry topics that they've put on as filters. So what we try and work with you to do is on the front end, make sure that content is refined to a place where it's still going to be relevant to everyone. But yeah, that is also on the customer to decide what the scale of the amount of content is going to be.
Cool. I got a question for you, and I think we might have covered this a couple of weeks ago when we talked about it originally. But you have ChatGPT integration, but you've got your own little boxes that shape the tone.
Mm-hmm.
Is it is it possible for us to integrate like our own ChatGPT API code where we're using 4 instead of 3.5? Because we teach a specific prompting strategy to where people can literally clone their own brand voice when they write stuff. Because it looks like I'm not able to actually put in a full-on prompt. I have to temper it with your parameters, which would potentially supersede anything that we do. Is there a way to essentially turn off those little meters that you have that say, oh, talk in a friendly voice, where we actually have the prompt that tells it exactly how we want it to speak?
That's a great question. That's one I will turn over to Paul, because he is our chief innovator and he headed up the ChatGPT integration. So I think that's more his expertise.
It's a great question, John. Thanks for asking it. The short answer is today, no. The longer answer is quite possibly. They are just APIs. And, I think as Elizabeth alluded to and talked about, we do have integrations with APIs. It is part of what we do. By design, we created a much simpler interface to ChatGPT because for our audience right now, that's the interface that made sense. It's like, we know that it's about newsletters. So behind the scenes, we're building prompts based on the inputs that intentionally guide it to creating newsletter appropriate language. But I can easily envision cases as we go forward to say, yeah, if you have a more fine-tuned model, we could probably talk about how we integrate. Now, we're not also in the business of creating custom integrations, but if you have something as a model that looks like ChatGPT or one of the other well-known ones that we can integrate with, okay, we can imagine how that would work. The
John,
other direction, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
No, go ahead, Paul. Finish up, Paul.
The other direction we're going to be going is, to your point, is building our own customer-specific training on top of the data set based on your verbiage. So as you talk about, you've already got things that are trained on yours. Great. Well, as you pull in stuff into your newsletter, either content that you're writing, articles that you're approving, those things begin to give us some sense of your voice, and we'll be able to start building customer-specific training on top of the models. Today, we don't have that. But again, the techniques, if you're in that world, are sort of well known. It's just a matter of finding the time and the priority to start introducing that training.
Yeah, Paul, John hasn't seen your black belt ninja prompt generating kind of code, right? So from that, I think I understand where they're coming from for the 80-20 rule. They're clearly going to match up with 80% of the audience, but there is the 20% you're training up that are going to be, on the more advanced kind of level, right? And so, but it probably wouldn't be hard to do, but I don't know how much money they'd make off of. I guess that's my short answer. Because it's just feeding the prompt info to ChatGPT and getting the result back, which is pretty straightforward. But yeah.
And as we built this, what you're alluding to, I think, Bob, is the 80-20 rule. Those 20%, like John, and we'll talk about John, he's not here for a moment. They already know how to do things like this.
Right.
Okay, great. Go use your tool, bring it in, just bring it into our tool. I'm not going to be able to build on our first version of this feature. I'm not going to be able to build something better than what you're already used to. I'm building something that enables people who aren't currently doing it. Versions 2, 3, 4 of this. A lot of our 2024 product direction is around enhancing AI capabilities in a couple of different ways, as we've talked about here. But building content discovery, the text generation, the recommendation algorithms. There's a bunch of different directions through 2024 where we really want to grow our AI capabilities.
Well, and I do this for John occasionally because he doesn't do it for himself. But you guys should look at those videos in the library they got, because I could tell you they would probably give you some pretty good insight about the types of things that you might think about having in your mind as you go forward, because he's done some really great work on how to really maximize what you get out of these large language models by prompting them correctly. So there's some good stuff there.
Yeah, Bob's just jonesing for a new lunch, I guess, right?
No, you're just, ironically, you're not really good at telling people about this because you're very modest. But the reason I'm on this, because, I'm a COO of a technology company. I'm not the marketing guy. But the technology that
sure.
we're using here and the way that John's going about it has a tremendous amount of value. So I'm, you guys are doing the same thing. You're playing, it's not identical. It is in the same it's in the same ecosystem though. Yeah. So it makes sense.
I definitely get
makes sense for that.
Yeah, I totally get the path, Paul. I would be doing the same thing, making it simple for the 80%, and everybody, eventually you kind of figure out a path for the 20. Like, for instance, we spent an enormous amount of time working with ChatGPT-4 and creating really interesting prompts to get the results that we're looking for specific things. But then we've also run into the limits, and so we start using Claude for things, and then we end up mashing the two up, right? So, but it's not in the context of a newsletter that's going out to the masses. It's more, it's more detailed. But if we're going to create something really special and really lengthy, then we're probably going to move over to Claude for something like that, because we train it with a whole lot more data to get the output that we're looking for. But again, it probably has very little overlap with what you're doing. But
John, it's like you're the super user and you guys are the super platform. I mean, it's made in heaven, it's more of a team thing. It's not, I do this and, I don't need you. Yeah. You need the super user and you need the super platform. So this is a
John,
beautiful seminar.
There'll be 2 of us for lunch, John. Just so
There you go. Paul's going to have to come on over. Yeah. Hey, Anand, you had a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Paul, question for the readability of the newsletters or the acceptance of newsletter frequency. My question is, in your experience serving so many association members, do you think daily newsletters are having a higher readability than weekly or monthly? What's the trend in the last 3 or 6 months?
As with all hard questions, the answer is a simple, it depends. I have a hard time offering, and this is one, I'm going to give my opinion, then I'm going to point to Elizabeth, as she's much closer to a lot of our customers. From our deliverability and engagement perspective, I can't really point to something as a trend one way or the other. We have a lot of associations who send daily. My personal feel is daily's a bit much. That's a personal feel. These newsletters that send daily, they have very different content going out day by day. They generally have what I would consider good engagement metrics. And so I couldn't point to and say, if you send daily, you're clearly going to have worse engagement metrics than if you send weekly. It really depends on the audience, their interest, the topics, their expectations, any number of things. So yes to all options, maybe to others. It depends. I don't know if Elizabeth wants to offer her opinion on it.
I would say exactly what you said. It's so dependent on specific factors like audience, their engagement, what you're sending. We typically, we send a lot of dailies. I think our most popular frequency is weekly. Okay. We also have people come to us and say, what's the best way I can utilize this for my monthly newsletter or even my quarterly newsletter? And to that point, we say, that a monthly newsletter, that's 12 times a year that you're engaging with your audience. That's not a lot of opportunity to engage with them, to present them really personalized news. So we recommend sending more often than monthly. But again, the cadence can really just depend on, your content strategy and those subscribers and what they want. And we also encourage you to ask about that. Send a survey out. How often do you want this? Is this something you're waking up and checking every day because it gives you your news for the day and that's part of your routine? Or is it a weekly summary of something that I just want to glance at and get my news and move on?
Thank you.
Okay, one last question.
Yeah, Paul, I'm sorry, I'm going to squeeze in here because it might be appropriate and risk of sounding dumb. is your system on the platform, is everything automatically mobile optimized?
Yes, all of
Okay,
our
that's all I
out of the
need.
box templates. Yeah, and if you do a
Thanks.
custom template, we add in those mobile settings as well.
Okay.
Perfect. And then the last question, I don't know. I'm just, since Paul's on, I figured I'd put him in the hot seat for this question, but I'm wondering, where would it possibly be on your radar for us to essentially take a YouTube channel and make it a subscription to where it becomes part of our feed, and we can go, oh, this would be a good video, this would be a good video, where we could put it into the newsletter.
That already exists, John.
Get out of the city. Really?
That YouTube
No,
is
really?
the source option. So you put in your YouTube channel, when you post to there, we bring it in. And
It would be
that's
our
down there.
own, but would it be somebody else's? We could actually put it some other
Yeah,
people.
either way. Yeah, you just give us the
Oh,
channel
very
you want to
cool.
feed in.
Okay. All right. Cool. I just wasn't sure that was even on the radar because I didn't see it in your big wheel of logos.
Oh yeah, it should be
So,
in there.
Oh, really? We got to update
amazing.
that because
We gotta update those logos.
you know, we do try to stay abreast of relevant media feeds. We used to use X. They've become a little less reliable from an API's perspective. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube are really some of the places where people point to, this is where we're sharing our content, or where a author, creator that I value is sharing their content. I want to bring that content in.
Perfect. Amazing. Thanks. Well, look, we appreciate you guys coming. Thanks for all the hard work, Elizabeth, especially. So in closing, I'll let you guys wrap it up, but you can go learn more about it at rasa.io, rasa.io. Amazing product. I'll let you guys have closing remarks, and then we'll adios.
Yeah, well, again, thank you so much, John. Like I said at the beginning, it's always fun to talk AI with some fellow local Louisianians and people from all over. So thank you to everyone for taking the time to learn a little bit more about AI and email, and specifically the power of newsletters.
Amazing. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate everybody showing up, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Godspeed.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.